Welcome to this deep dive into Strange's Quantizer. Strange's 16-bit outputs mean it can be as microtonal as you want. So to do non-Western tunings or avant-garde microtonality, there's always enough resolution to send Strange's raw output to a dedicated microtonal quantizer. But to get the most out of Strange, you need to use its onboard quantizer, and that means understanding a little bit about where it comes in the signal chain. To illustrate this, we're going to capture a loop. That'll do nicely. The loop is always captured at the microtonal resolution, before the quantizer. This means that as we engage more notes in the quantizer, it will reveal hidden details of the underlying contour. And this would still work even if we only had one note dialed in when we captured the loop. We can filter whatever Strange's output is through whatever we've dialed into the quantizer, and the scale preset secondary function on C# gives 3 banks, X, Y and Z, of 12 prime form scales. Bank X preset 1 on C gives you a major 7th, X2 a dominant 7th, and so on. We'll soon be dialing in a full scale, but before we get there, we need a little bit of background. Let's call a scale any ascending series of steps that connect an octave. The series tone-tone semitone, tone-tone tone semitone makes every major scale, like this one. Strange's music theory engine can apply scale transformations. Suppose you took the interval series and shifted it. And shifted again. And again. In music theory parlance, each shift is called a mode. And since the shifts are all of the same underlying pattern, they all have a kind of family resemblance. What we meant before, where we said that the presets are prime form scales, each one a unique family. We dialed in the diatonic set, which includes the major scale, the Dorian, the Phrygian, and this, Aeolian mode, or natural minor. But while the diatonic set has 7 modes, some scales have a hidden feature. This preset is the harmonic minor, and it can also be reflected to make mirror scales, a property known as chirality. We said that ordinary modes are shifts or rotations, but imagine counting the interval series down from the root note. Modal rotations clockwise of noon give the standard modes. Anti-clockwise of noon give the reflections. The 7 shifts and 7 reflections make this prime form a family of 14 modes to explore live in performance. It's quite tricky to see this with a 7-note scale, so let's make a simplified 4-note chiral arpeggio. Without actually applying the shifts, here are the ordinary modes obtained by holding C and turning the Y knob clockwise of noon. Back to where we started by pointing noon, and here, anti-clockwise, are the reflections. Now let's hear the full effect by changing the bass line when I apply the shift, releasing the C. All I'm doing here is pulling up one of the faders on C, playing the accompaniment off camera, like that, to correspond with one of the notes in the selected rotation in the quantizer. We don't normally think of arpeggios as having modes, but Strange's music theory brain can take that all in its stride to provide another really useful harmonic performance feature. Reflecting achiral or unhanded scales, like the diatonic set, just gives another copy of their ordinary modes. We'll return to modes in a little bit, but for now let's explore another feature of Strange's music theory brain, the circle of fifths. Major scales, whose root note is a perfect fifth apart, share all but one of their notes. They are therefore closely related, meaning we can switch between them smoothly. Scale Transform and Z lets you achieve this. With each step of the knob, I change the scale one note at a time to its most closely related neighbour in the circle of fifths. Slightly unfortunately, musicians call this modulation, which of course means something different in Eurorack. Nevertheless, the musical effect is clear. Let's go from C to G. Don't worry that you have to recognise which scale you're in. As long as you only step up or down by 1, it will always be related. For example, the next step up to D. Larger steps, of course, also work, but the further away you get, the fewer notes the scales will share, so the more clunky the gear change. We can also come back down through the circle of fifths to C, and now to F. Strange is taking care of which notes appear in the quantizer automatically. Let's go to B flat. All I need to do is to ensure this is compatible with the other parts by sequencing them, putting Strange under voltage control so it changes in sync, or for those feeling particularly brave, playing it live. So far, we've been doing everything in relation to C, that is, the modes of C and the circle of fifths from C. But sometimes we just want to do a block transpose. That is to say, shifting a scale up or down by semitones. And of course Strange does this too. So let's jump to a completely unrelated key, C to C sharp, by holding scale transform and moving the X knob. Now down a tone to B. Not something you'd ever do in 1750, but in 2025, it's all good. And finally back up a semitone to C. We said before that the point of the circle of fifths is to change the root note. So here we are, cycling through the modes on C with the root note C common to all of them. Except C major has exactly the same notes as D Dorian. So Strange lets me set the root note by long holding, in this case D. Watch for the flash. D is now our new root, so that now when I modally rotate, I get all the modes of D, with D being the common note between them. I'm just going to change Sig's bass line up to D. There. So now you're hearing it in the context of D Dorian, and setting up the switch to D Phrygian. D Aeolian, D major or Ionian, D Lydian, with that glorious raised fourth, back to D Dorian, change the root note back to C and Sig's bass line to match, and we're back where we started, which is a good place to point out that whatever the modal rotation and whether loaded from a preset or not, the Quantizer can always be updated on the fly. The ability to set root notes in combination with modal rotations offers one additional and completely unique feature. Imagine being able to rotate around a note that wasn't in the scale or arpeggio you were using. We're starting with some pretty standard, although effective, rotations of the C minor arpeggio, all playing on top of a pedal note coming from Sig. Except now we're going to mix it up by rotating everything around a note that has no business belonging in C minor at all, E. It's obviously almost impossible to guess where this is going to go, so Strange only applies the rotation when you remove your finger. A useful performance technique, therefore, is to check which notes light up and set one of these as the accompaniment. Such is the power of music theory that it will always work, like this. This means we can achieve quite remote changes of key quite effectively, with Strange doing all of the theoretical heavy lifting. Above all else, the most important thing to remember is that the music theory we've built into Strange's Quantizer assumes no knowledge on your part. Dial up a preset or punch in some notes, twiddle the knobs, and Strange will do its thing. At the same time, it's not intended to be a substitute for musical knowledge. Quite the opposite. Our real intention is to invite exploration. Think of Strange's Quantizer as a map. Its presets, landmarks, and its modal rotations, portals to uncharted melodic lands and harmonic terrains.